Hello and welcome to the Band of One podcast. I'm Riley Wilson, and this podcast was designed for absolutely anyone that would like to start, develop, or grow an existing solo or small group career. I've got over 50 years of live performing experience that will include not only my tips, but the tips from other working professionals from all over the globe. The idea here is to make this actionable, fun, entertaining, and maybe even profitable. If you like what we do, be sure and subscribe and share the podcast, considering becoming a sponsor. So let's get busy. Once again, I'm visiting with my buddy, Steve Henry. Steve, once again, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be back.
Include a little bit of background information with all of these. We'll talk about websites and how to get to the Bodark webpage and all that in a little bit. But let's go back again. Once you had finished with law school, you were working in El Paso for a while. You moved to Dallas. Did you continue working even occasionally then once you'd moved here, or how did that go?
No, I was still playing regularly. I had initially I had I got recruited to play in a classic rock band and to play bass of all things. So back again, and that was fun. But I was doing a lot of either solo things or do a lot of duet things where someone would come in and I would accompany them with guitar and then sing along. They might have a gig, so I was almost a backup musician in a sense. But it was I've continued. That's what I do. I tell people, I said, some people have bowling night. I'm the guy that has music or band night. That's just who I am and who I've always been. But yeah, which I continued. And this is back in the 80s and 90s, and it was getting to be a little bit more difficult during that period of time because the whole DJ thing was coming in more. Fewer clubs were playing. David Card at Poor David's Pub was kind enough to let me play, a couple of times back then, and I played there, a number of times over the years. But the live music scene at that point getting a little bit tougher.
Yes, I think a lot of us that have played throughout that, again, in the 70s, if you were reasonably good, you could play a lot of places. The 80s changed things a little bit because we had, things like drum machines, synthesizers, five-string basses, and so the music was changing. Then you had grunge, which was popular for a while, but DJs have always kind of encroached on or have caused issues for musicians. One of the main reasons I moved to Texas is that in 1996, I had a bass player and a guitar player taking lessons with me who were both DJs on the weekends. And they were playing all the places that my five-piece band had played the previous 2 or 3 years. And so I saw that my large band in North Carolina was getting squeezed, if you will, squeezed out of places. And it had gotten more and more expensive to live in Raleigh. And again, as I said, we'd had some friends that had suggested look at Texas. And when I came here, I found out that Texas, because it's such a big place, almost any kind of music that you're into, you can find an audience for somewhere. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I do agree with that. I mean, Texas is big. And, in Dallas is a very urban city. The people in Fort Worth say Dallas is where the East peters out, as they like to laugh. And Dallas is really looks to the east more than it does to the west, whereas you get into Austin and Fort Worth, and that's really more of a Texas and Western thing. But it's there's plenty of places to play. And I'll go back for a second talking about, to your point about the DJs were playing in places that your five-piece band were. And I get that. I mean, I get the economics of it because, you got these club owners and, as I used to tell people way back in the day when I was, playing and traveling around the country and playing full time, I described my job. I said it was pretty simple. I said our job was to bring girls into the club, which would make boys come into the club and then get them to dance, which would make them hot and sweaty so they would buy beer. That's a pretty simple job description. Fast forward, the DJs could sort of do the same thing because of the dancing part, and a club could pay a DJ, I don't know what usually less than they paid the full band, So that put a little that put a little crimp on live music, but as we touched on the last episode we did, it's always the live musician, the economics just are the solo musician, the economics just work better. And so there's always been opportunities, as a solo or a duet or a small group, to play and to play live pretty much as you want.
So along those lines, one of the questions that I wanted to ask you is that did you find that the band arguments decreased drastically when you were doing those solo gigs in College Station?
Well, I had, I talked to myself a lot, like, what the heck am I doing? But yes, obviously,
Yeah,
the band drama drops precipitously.
I will jokingly tell people that sometimes I'm going to give the band member a good talking to on the way home after the gig, particularly if something didn't work out exactly as I wanted. But you
That's
mentioned
awesome.
about a lack of drama. What are some of the other advantages of playing solo that you would share with anybody?
Uh, well, I will tell you why I really, really, and we get at some point we'll talk about COVID and how that I think that changed a lot of things, but for the better, actually, and interestingly enough. But as far as what the great thing about playing solo for me is that I have total control over what I do, and because I write a lot, there will be venues that I play. I literally play nothing but my originals for 3 hours, and I love it. I mean, because it's like your children, right? Some of them you like a little bit better than the other ones, but they're all your children, and I love that. And then some places, they'll want to mix. Do some of your solo stuff, do some of your or your I'm sorry, your own stuff, and then do some covers. And then some place mostly want covers. And you just have to kind of sense that out. You know that, Riley. I mean, you get in
Absolutely.
there and you're starting going, okay, do these people want background music? Do they want to be engaged? Do they want to talk? And I love talking to people. I mean, so when I'm playing solo, again, stuff that you can more easily do when you're playing solo is you can engage with the audience and you can banter with them, and they have almost as much fun, maybe more fun, doing talking with you and you talking back with them than just listening to music. But it's all about a show. And it's really about getting out there. And when somebody walks away after they've come to see you, they looked to their spouse or their friend, said, you know what, that was fun. I really enjoyed that. And if that's the experience they get out of it, then I've done my job, and I know I'm sure you feel the same way. So, I
Absolutely.
got
It's interesting. I I found out that I wasn't a bad comedian on some of these solo gigs because there are times that you have to have a sense of humor about things. If you can poke fun at yourself or a situation, it always works out well.
absolutely,
And
absolutely.
I think that you learn a lot about yourself. You learn a lot about people and audiences. But yeah, I felt like and still feel to this day that if I can leave a venue and people feel better about themselves or just they had a better evening because they were there than any other place, then I have accomplished my job. I'm going to take a little detour with this because I want to come back and get your input about this. When I did a place called Randy's Steakhouse here in Frisco from '96 to '99, and that
Yep.
was only me with a headset microphone and an Ovation guitar plug that was go through the house. And I did 3 years of it.
Mm-hmm.
It was lucrative. It was a lot of fun. I learned a lot. But for myself, I got tired of just hearing my voice and my guitar. And so I went to using tracks and ended up going that route to the point now where there are actually places that I don't get asked to play because I insist on using tracks, but I know how I want to sound and present myself. And I feel more comfortable having those. Did you ever
Yep.
have that sort of dialogue? I know that you've also used tracks as well, but you also play
Right.
just acoustic guitar and vocals. So can we talk about that?
Absolutely. And I will tell you, there's always, you got a lot of musicians that sort of frown on that, like that's something bad. But I create all of when I'm playing with tracks, I create my own. I play every instrument on it. I do the background harmony. The fun thing about that is that gives me the opportunity to do best of both worlds. I can be the solo, but it also feels like I'm playing with the band. Uh, Now the technology of making sure that all works out, you have to work through that a little bit, because there's always the opportunity for chaos to go in, because if you're doing a verse that's not there, your band's not going to go with you. You got to go back and follow that. But I will tell you that I like it for a couple of reasons. Well, first of all, I just like making the tracks. So I'm here in my studio, and I'll typically start. I'll just be me, one of my songs or cover. And the first thing I'll do is just make a scratch track. So I'll sing with just my guitar and a microphone, and I've got a click track in the background. So I do it all, and then I just start building it up. The bass, I use Easy Drummer for the drums. I'll put some keys in it. Mandolin. I do a little banjo. Put that all in there. And when you go, I mean, like I said, some people, I mean, I think generally people like that. For some reason, the winery gigs I play, they people tend to like having the tracks back there, maybe more than other places. But I enjoy doing it. I mean, I probably if I'm doing solo, most of the shows like you that I do, I'll use tracks.
And what's your go-to rig of choice for that? Like a DAW or digital audio workstation. What do you use and how do you record all that?
Well, I recorded with Logic Pro X, I guess technically. I've got a couple of mics that I use. The workhorse is a Shure SM7B, which I have found is a great single mic to do not only with the instrumentals but also vocals. I run through an Apollo Twin as the audio interface. Um, so that's how I do it, and then uh, I export. Um, I export those musics. There's a website called Loop Community, and it's actually it came up in Praise Music. These guys, but they created a website, and you can subscribe and you can upload as much of your music as you want, and it's all there. So I've literally got hundreds of tracks uploaded to this website, and their app is called Prime, Prime. So what you can then do is I download the Prime app to an iPad, and then I export whatever songs I want to the iPad. I can put them on there, slow it down if you want. You can change keys. So if your voice you've played, you played the night before, and your voice is not maybe as perky as it was, and you want to drop it a half step and slide down the capo, do whatever. And then I run out of the iPad into the front of the house, and that's how I do it. And it's not complicated, but it takes a little while to get up to speed on putting all that together. But that's the most effective and most simple system I've got. I know a lot of people use their laptops and run it straight off of that, but the iPad thing works for me.
What I was saying is that I have recently gone to the Steven Slate VSX system, which emulates all these fancy rooms, and that's helped me. Have you struggled with mixing all of your stuff for gigs, or has that come pretty simple because of either the Apollo Twin or how you got your room set up, or has that been an issue for you, or no?
Yeah, I'll tell you, that's a great question. What I typically do is I will get the same mix, and I try to make all the mixes, uh, uh, the wave files before I export them into MP3s and drag them over to the iPad. I try to make them all sound the same. When it gets to playing it in the room, whether it's a dead room or it's a live room, I try to adjust that. Really, probably all I've got is just the reverb to modify that. So if you've got a very dead room, you want to put a little color to it, just up the reverb. But the important thing for me is to make sure that all of those tracks sound alike. So if I've got them on my headphone and I'm playing one right after another, it sounds like I recorded them uh, sequentially.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really, really important. By the way, I've got a little tip for you and any of our readers slash listeners when they hear this, or viewers, listeners, and that is when you export it, don't export it as an MP3.
Yeah, right.
Export as an AAC file. I learned
Oh,
that from an old friend named Michael Hurwitz that I went to Musicians Institute with, gosh, back in the 80s. And he said that the MP3 compression, you'll actually hear it pumping a little bit, particularly on a larger system. So I would recommend anybody that's a Mac user to do this as an AAC file. Now, if you've got unlimited hard drive room on your phone or your pad or whatever, of course, make it a WAV file, knock yourself
yeah,
out. But the AAC file is only slightly bigger than an MP3 and it sounds much better.
yeah.
When you're doing solo gigs, we'll do that. Then I want to go to the duo and the band stuff that you also do now. What are you taking in terms of a guitar? Do you bring a vocal mic or a sound system, or how does any of that work?
Well, I bring it all. I bring I've got a pedal board that has evolved over the year. I'm a bit of a gear junkie, but I've finally got something that I'm happy with my solo. Uh, for a long time, I would bring two guitars. Sometimes because I do alternate tunings. I play a lot in DADGAD, some in Open D.
Yeah.
Uh, so rather than retune, but I've got to the point now I can do it so fast. The smaller is better. I think you probably appreciate that.
Yes.
So I'll bring a, mic. I bring a mic stand. I bring a mic. I've got the little on the mic stand. I've got the little holder for the iPad that runs my backing tracks. Uh, One guitar, the two guitars I play with now alternate. Is I've got a Martin D28 that actually I love that guitar. But I got it gifted to me by my oldest son uh, for Father's Day one year at Collings, and it's got a wonderful sound too. But I also bring a mandolin because there are songs that I play mandolin on. So I've that's an instrument that I didn't take up until about I don't know 6 or 7 years ago. I'm not great in it, but I can certainly play it and make it sound good. And so, gosh, and then for the sound system, if it's a smaller room, I have a Fishman 330X array, portable array with a little sub that goes on it. So I'll come out and I've got a Bose T8 mixer. So I take everything into the Bose mixer, and then I'll take a mono feed out from the Bose to the Fishman. If I'm playing larger places, I have built two subs, and then I've got some 8-inch QSC speakers that go on that. Don't like doing that much just because that's a lot of stuff to drag around. Uh, but that's my setup for playing live.
Now, are you using pedals with the mandolin or acoustic guitar or both?
Both. So my pedal setup, I've got the first thing that comes in. I've got what's called a Morley, and it's got you can have two inputs, and it's got gain control on either of those inputs, and then you can do one or two outputs. But I bring the mandolin in on one, I bring the guitar in on another. I take the output, I run it through a tuner, and then I run it through uh, the a little body TC Helicon body res just to give it a little bit more depth. I've got a little pedal that I've used for years called Wonderland. It gets just put a tiny bit of shimmer on it. I like that. Then I run it through a pedal, another TC Helicon called Harmony Singer, and that's where you can do vocals. You can do a third, a fifth. You can do too high, too whatever you want to do. I enjoy doing that, particularly if I'm not playing with tracks. Uh, and then of course you take that mic goes in there, and then the feed out goes to the board. But the guitar goes through. The last thing it goes through is a Fishman Tone DEQ, and that allows me to put a little reverb. It's got a little EQ. It's got a little compressor. You can do a little chorus, and it does, I think, a really good job at shaping. the sound of an acoustic instrument, whether it's a mandolin or guitar. But what I have found is that uh, the only difference on that pedal chain between the guitar and the mandolin is just the adjusting the volume at the front end of the chain. Uh, it it I don't know. For me, it works. Now this is I've gone through a lot of iterations of a pedal board that did not work very well. But this one's okay, and it's it's a little 3 rail, so it's light, and which again is the most important thing for me. Light is good. Small is good.
Absolutely. Yeah. Both of us, we've hauled to, my first professional band, we had not one, but two Hammond organs.
Oh my gosh.
Not just that, we had
Oh.
an RMI piano, a Wurlitzer piano, some huge amps.
Mhm.
Because back in 1973, you didn't run things through the sound system unless you were a national recording act with the deal and
Absolutely.
you're trying to sell your latest LP. Back in those days, we just cranked it up and hoped everybody heard us. And
Yep.
so definitely, but one of the great things these days is lighter is better. What caused you to pick up the mandolin 6 years ago, Steve?
Uh, I had when I was, when I started rolling more uh, cover songs into my sets, uh, because my music is has more of an Americana, Texas focus to it, little alt country. That's sort of the genre that I find. Although I write, a lot of different stuff. But one of the artists that I've always admired a lot and liked a lot is Steve Earle, another Texas guy, and there was a song that he played called Galway Girl. Um, in fact, it was on some, I can't remember the name of the movie, but it was the song for that. But he plays mandolin on it. And I'm
Interesting.
like, you know, I want to do that. So I get on, reverb.com or sell you anything. And I find a moderately priced mandolin called the Lore. And, so I get it and I'm like, okay, what do I do? And I literally just, again, self taught on everything. I just sort of fumble through life like I fumbled through my instruments. But I finally figure out what the chords are, and then I finally figured out what for the ones I play primarily, the just everything about it. And so now I'll play. I guess if I'm playing a 3 hour set, and usually interesting when I play live a 3 hour set, I don't take a break. I just plumb
Really?
through. Yeah. If I take a break, it's only because maybe in the middle the call of nature hits me. But I just like kind of keep going through. But so I'll play maybe 8 or 9 out of a whatever it comes, 39 song set. I'll probably play 8 or 9 songs where I'm playing mandolin.
Wow, interesting. And you were already a good guitar player, so you could kind of see. Although do you do the Tommy Tedesco cheater system of tuning it like a guitar, or do you tune it like a mandolin in fifths?
No, I tune it like a mandolin, which is of course an upside down guitar.
Yeah,
The the,
yeah,
the E on
yeah.
the bottom, the EADG going up toward the top, and But once you get that, and I will tell you, interestingly enough, I found that doing soloing on a mandolin, it depends on the key you're in, but is almost to me easier than soloing on a guitar. I mean, everything is so close there. The thing that I'm still working on is the ability to just sit there and do the almost the flat picking thing on the mandolin.
Yeah, the
Those
tremolo
guys,
pick, that's a tough thing.
yeah, I'm telling you. And I read something the other day from the guy that's now playing for the Eagles, who's a country guy.
Yes, Vince Gill.
Thank you, Vince Gill. And he said he was talking about playing the mandolin. He says anybody that plays the mandolin with the point of the pick as opposed to the rounded edge of the pick is an idiot. He says because with the rounded edge you can do that more quickly. And in fact, I didn't know this. He says he plays all of his guitars with the rounded edge. So that was a great tip, and so I'm doing trying to do that a little bit more. I will never be a great mandolin player, but again, I'm enjoying myself, and hopefully people out there are enjoying themselves too.
Well, I think the interesting thing about this, first of all, talking about Vince and using the rounded corner of the pick, there are several other guitar players that do that. Pat Metheny's done that for many, many years. And a
Right.
lot of other guitar players that find that they can get a little bit more tone by
Hmm.
doing that. So I think that's a great tip.
Yeah.
Little
Yeah.
joke there for our viewers and listeners. Um,
Right.
when you're playing band gigs these days, let's talk about your duo, Bodark Revival. Is that it?
Yeah. Bodark, Bodark, Bodark Revival.
Tell me about how that came about.
Well, so I'll go back a bit. I started a band, my first Americana band, maybe 15, 20 years ago, and it's called Black Dirt Tango. And it was the first Americana band I'd done. Before that, it was more like classic rock stuff. And we've done a lot of recording. We've got several albums that are, you can stream on any of the services, that sort of thing. And um, when we first started, we wanted a fiddle player. And so we go back in the day, we go on Craigslist and we post, fiddle player wanted for Americana band. This is a story that actually has an ending. So we get this young lady who says, "Hey, I'm just moving here from Beaumont. I'd like to come and try out." And we're like, "Oh, okay." Well, she comes and tries out. She just blows us away. And her name is Shelley New. She was actually taking a job as an orchestra instructor up in McKinney, and just one of my most favorite people ever. So anyway, the Black Dirt Tango, we were sort of doing less live and more virtual. Um, the people I were playing with, they didn't want to play live as much as I did, and so Shelley, she wanted to play more live, and she just help supplement her income and all that stuff. So she gets an opportunity to join a guy named Jeff Brooks, who was another friend of mine, with a band called the Bodarks, and they're out of Frisco, McKinney area. And so they played. So she left a very friendly departure, Black Dirt Tango, to go with the Bodarks, and they played for a number of years. Uh, Unfortunately, Jeff, oh gosh, I guess it was 2 years ago, he ended up getting cancer. A young guy, just a tragedy because he was such a great guy, and literally anybody that met the guy just loved him. So he gets cancer, and then unfortunately he passes away. And so, I reach out to Shelley, say, "Hey, I'm so sorry because I know you and Jeff were great friends, and I'd actually been communicating directly with Jeff because I'd been down the exact same cancer journey he had, and unfortunately for him, his didn't have the results that mine did." But I reached out to her, and she was. About a couple of weeks later, she goes, "Hey, do you ever want to get together and jam sometime?" I said, "Sure, I'll do whatever." I just been doing solo, actually since COVID started. That was all I'd been doing. So anyway, I got with her, and one thing led to get the other. And she says, I'd like to put back together the full Bodarks, but we can't call it Bodarks." And so she came up with Bodark Revival, which I thought was great. But so we on that, we probably half our gigs we do duets with Shelley and I, and then about half of them is with the full band. Orchestration is me on guitar and vocals. We have a percussionist, Doc Cook, that plays the. I mean, he plays everything. He's unbelievable. How you learn that, I don't know. He's got the washboard and cymbals and the cajon. I mean, he's got everything. And then Shelley plays fiddle, and then we've got a banjo player who also plays mandolin, and then an upright bass. And so that's Modoc Revival. That's what we're doing now.
You guys have a web page?
The Bodarks. It hasn't been kept up as much. We do Facebook. My Facebook page, Black Dirt Tango, we post on that as well. But yeah, it's the Bodarks. We need to get it upgraded, but it's not bad. It's just not as current as it should be. The Facebook is more current.
Let's talk about. Do you guys do video?
We do. We've got some
Has
YouTube.
that been an important part of your musical journey?
It in the sense of, you know, sort of perfecting your art. And I did some, because I played solo for a number of years after COVID hit exclusively. But as far as, the art goes, it's great to sit there and see and watch and see you, how the audience sees you, because you have this image in your mind of what you sound like and what you see and whatnot. But to be able to see it on a well-made, nice microphones, good video, I think that helps a lot. I really do. It's also helpful if you're, when you're looking to gig, you can say, oh, because everybody wants to see you. If you hadn't played a place, they like, well, who are you? And you can just send them links, and that gives you instant credibility, candidly. And I know you're really active in that area, which, by the way, compliments to you. You got a great online presence. You really do.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, and I had this conversation with David Payton as well as some of our other performers. And I think that video is a great way to determine instantly if somebody has credibility or not.
Yep.
But you guys obviously have done a lot of recording. So I'm sure that gets you into places that without those recordings, you would not get otherwise. Am I right?
Yeah, we've got so the Bodarks, before I joined, I think they did 4 albums. Black Dirt Tango, we've done 4, and we're finishing up number 5. I tell people Black Dirt Tango is now a virtual band. We're still recording. I still write and record with them, or with that. So we've got a lot of albums out there, and that does give you credibility. So people not only can see you, they can hear you. But I will tell you, I think if I had to choose between the two, it would be video.
Okay, let's talk about virtual because you've talked about that a couple of times. I think COVID affected a lot of people differently. Outside of Texas, I think it shut effectively a lot of the states down. But
Mm-hmm.
as I had a conversation with a couple of people, I think I took April and May of 2020 off, and I was playing gigs again in June of 2020. What
Yep.
was your experience to that?
That's very similar. So I've got a little place out in the country, and when COVID hit, my wife and my youngest son and I bugged out. Uh, but when I bugged out with my computer, my audio interface, my microphone, and the virtual band, we literally recorded album number 4 remotely. None of us ever saw the other one live through the whole process.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I recorded, I had a little, it was almost like I had a little closet, and I was in there, because it had the best acoustical effects in our house down there, and I'm writing music and doing it. And then I'm sending the file. We use Lander, which is a great file transfer. It also does free mastering, which is great. To our bass player, who's also a audio engineer, and he was the engineer for the album. So we literally wrote and recorded that entire album virtually, and put it online. It was a great experience. So we just decided, well, that was easy. So we're doing number 5. The other experience that I got out of COVID, uh, musically, so I'll just quick story. So, we're down there, and you're right. It's February, March, April, and there's nothing happening. So one day I'm driving to the grocery store in the nearest little town called Clifton, Texas. This is northeast of Waco. And they've got a little winery there, and a tasting room. And so I'm driving to the store, and I go by, and everything is shut down at this point. And I see that there's a little sign, it's a little neon sign, it says open. And so I walk in, and I knew the owner. I've known him for several years. And I said, Gary, I said, are you open? He goes, yeah. He says, man, if I don't go open, I'm going to lose my business. And I looked at him and said, you want some music? And so he goes, yeah. And he goes, I don't know if I'll be able to pay you. I said, look, I'll work for Tip Jar for a while. We'll see how this goes. And so I just started playing regularly there as a solo, bringing in the tracks and everything. And I will tell you, I mean, I played a lot there, more regularly than I'd played in years. Uh, and you know this, but when you play regularly and you're playing stuff, all of a sudden, your voice is better, your playing's better, your audience, it's just better. There's no substitute for just getting out there and doing it. And I mean, it was a real godsend to me, and not only to have a place to play when everything else was shut down, but because I just needed that. It was a physical need to get out and play. I mean, you know that, but it was great. I mean, I did probably 3 years down there, just very regularly.
I'll tell you a funny story along those lines. There was a band on the East Coast many, many years ago, and they had a bass player who one time said that musicians get aroused to play music like people get aroused to be intimate. And that's not exactly his language. I'm going to give you the most sanitized version of it I can. But he was absolutely right. All of us that perform really do crave this. Steve, this has been tremendous. I have had, first of all, I think a couple of takeaways. The first one in the first lesson about, if you really want to do this, you absolutely have to love, love, love it. And the second thing is that I think all of us that have been performing for any amount of time really do need to perform. So I'm going to ask you a question as a fellow who has been playing for all of these years, but also had a job in corporate America. Maybe somebody's been in a band and they want to go solo, or maybe they've just kind of always puttered around, but they're thinking about making the leap to start doing solo gigs. What would you suggest, or what would you tell somebody like that?
Well, the first thing I would tell them is you've got to have online content. If you're just starting out and you don't have connections, I mean, because I've been doing this for so many years, I had a lot of connections. So getting gigs is not hard for me. Of course, you've got, the Bash, you've got or it used to be Gigmaster. You've got a lot of those things that you can do this. But I will tell you, if you're just starting out as a solo, I think the most important things you can do is get an online presence, get video of you playing, make sure you've got audio and this sort of thing, because every place you go into, 100% of the time, they're going to say, "Oh, can you send me a link to some of your stuff?" You're going to just sit there and say, "I'm the best soloist, best solo artist in the world." They'll go, "Yeah, send me a link." So, it may cost you a little bit of money to get some good videos. You don't have to have a ton, but that's the first thing I would tell people to do nowadays.
Fantastic. How about the folks that have been playing for a while? Any suggestions that you might have? I don't know that you've really reinvented yourself so much as you've kind of morphed from one thing to the next, but the playing was always constant. So what would you tell somebody that's been playing for a while, maybe wants to get better?
Play more. I mean, and play different styles of music too. The one blessing, or one of the blessings I have, was that, I went from, kind of the classic rock thing, to the solo, to the Americana. But the more different types of music that you can play, and the more musicians, you're able to play with, you're just going to get better. Because, I mean, no, like you teach. I mean, I've looked at some of your stuff. It's awesome. I mean, you're a spectacularly talented musician. But you could go and you could take lessons. I'm a big fan of that. I think that's great. But again, most importantly, I think, is just play. And you don't have to be the best musician in the band. You don't have to be anything. But if you've got a good attitude, that goes a long way in being a bandmate. It really does.
Absolutely, no question. Steve Henry, thank you so much. We've had so much wisdom and insight in these podcasts. I'm delighted to share it with everybody. Folks, thanks for listening. This is Riley Wilson for the Band of One podcast. We're glad that you joined us for this one. If you like what we do, be sure and share, subscribe, and consider becoming a sponsor of the podcast. If you have questions or ideas for upcoming podcasts, maybe potential guests or topics, email me, Riley@guitarmadesimpler.com. And our webpage, of course, is guitarmadesimpler.com. We'll include links to Steve's performances as well. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time.